you want to save money on your trading card purchases, we have a promo link over at 50cards.shop. Enter the promo code ATNIGHT to get 5% off your order. Hey everybody, welcome to Nexus at Night, your weekly Vanguard podcast that's been delayed by a day because now we're on Thursdays. I'm Atlas.
I'm Matt.
I'm root beer. I have ice cream.
Is that a drumstick?
Yeah.
Oh man, I haven't had a drumstick in forever. Or just ice cream in forever. It's been too long. Gotta go to a Cold Stone or something. I hate Salt and Straw. You guys ever been to Salt and Straw?
Nope.
It's like the most punchable. It's the most punchable ice cream place I've ever been to. They have like flavors that shouldn't be ice cream. Like, all right, we got rhubarb. Like, can I just get like vanilla? Vanilla's cool. No, okay.
That sounds less than ideal.
Yeah, go get a drumstick instead. We're going to talk about Chronojet and his return to Overdress. But first, quick thing about the misprints.
Yeah, so in case you somehow haven't noticed by now, V Collection Volume 5 and 6 have been misprinted to hell and back. Like, I think about half of the cards in there are just, like, wrong, and that's not counting all of, like, the miscuts and, like, weird blurry text.
Yeah,
and
like
cards just not having foiling.
Link Joker had literally all of its cards messed up. All of them.
Yep.
Nice.
New reprints, new stuff, all of it. Sword Magician Sarah from Pale Moon doesn't have a rarity. It's just, it looks like a double R.
Does it even look like a double art? Like, the pictures I saw, it didn't shine at all. It just looked like a common.
I have copies of it. You want me to run to the other room and get it?
I mean, sure.
Here's my copies of Sword Magician Sarah. And they're like, there's a little bit of shine, but not very much.
Yeah.
That's,
I see.
Yeah.
So I completely forgot to buy cards in this set, and now I'm like, do I wait?
Yeah, that's a pretty good idea. So, there's just a ton of cards that just have the wrong text on them. And it's very extensive because some of them significantly change how the card would be played.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, some of them are just funny, like, I think Vowing Sword Reverse just has the word from in its card text twice. Like,
Nice.
from, like, hand, rear guard, etc.
That's pretty funny.
And then there are, like, weird ones, like Amon, they got his name wrong. So, the reverse version of Amon has always just been Demon Marquis Amon Reverse, but the original one was Demon World Marquis Amon. So, for some reason, they put the world in the reverse version, which, if you wanted to play both copies of Amon Reverse in the same deck, you technically can, although you can't now because they eroded it.
Right.
But
Tyranno Legend for Ancient Dragon, that first ability where it gets 10k when you play it, there's a misprint that makes it look like it's permanent, which would be admittedly pretty funny if that really was the case.
Yeah.
Sounds sick. What's the problem?
I know, right?
One of the Regalia Grade 2 just lets you put 2 Regalia into your soul. It doesn't specify where from, so you can just reach over to your opponent's deck box and soul charge 2 Regalias.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. Let's see what else. And then there's Glendios. They got the text correct on one skill and then wrong on the other one, which is hilarious. So
what do you mean right on
all of
one?
So all of Glendios' ability specifies like a backwards R unit, so it counts the rebirth. And so for one of the printed abilities, they just put like when your R unit, but then the other ability says when your reverse unit. So it doesn't count the rebirth anymore. So they got the text wrong between 2 skills on the same card.
It's almost impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
just minor things like Genovius only checks for rested front row, but the current one says all units rested. Things like Giraffa and Jugs Max specify when units are placed instead of rear guards, which is actually kind of significant for Juggernaut. So yeah, it's just stuff like that. So Bushiroad did announce today that they're aware of all of the many, many, many problems, and that they're going to be starting an exchange program for like replacement cards. We haven't gotten the details of how that's going to work yet. Obviously, they just announced it, but yeah,
that's nice that it's an exchange program instead of outright just being like, "All right, we're reprinting them. We got to get them all again." Like,
yeah. So let me just share the tweet really quickly. And I'm too lazy to switch to my second screen. So.
That's okay. There you go.
Yeah, so we apologize for the inconvenience due to the card errors, blah, 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 usual corporate speak, and are currently arranging to produce replacement cards for exchange for all affected cards. So, like it says there, it seems like you're going to be able to exchange them, just we don't know the details of how that's going to work yet.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that's going to be harder in places outside of Japan, where the community is a little more like spread out. Like even in California, the difference between two locals is like most of LA. But granted, that's LA.
Yeah, this is one of those like this is directly an us problem, so they gotta have to figure it out somehow. But yeah, apparently we've just been having QC issues for a while now. Like apparently, like printings and foil, there have been a lot of like miscuts and weird foilings.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the current list of erratas. It seems like, for the most part, like D series cards haven't been too significantly affected by just wrong text.
Mm-hmm.
Like it looks like recently, Record of Ragnarok had a few erratas on it, but it seems like for the most part, like the V collections, because I'm looking back at like past erratas too, and it looks like a lot of like premium stuff has had to be errataed.
Yeah, and most of the time, if it turns out to be significant or something that your opponent could point out, you'd just be the guy with a screenshot, be like, it's not completely wrong,
You're not allowed to have phones. You have to like physically print them all out,
and
even then, it might result in a judge call.
So at that point, what do you do? Just be like, I know it's right. You call the judge because you have to, and then hope the judge sides with you? That's a little messed up.
I mean, judges should be able to look up erratas and see what the correct text is.
Yeah, but...
So yeah, at that point, it really is just like, get a judge over.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just if you know the card is wrong, right? Mm-hmm. Not everyone's going to keep an extensive list of erratas with them at all times. So if your opponent just says... Yeah. So if your opponent's just like, oh yeah, my card does this, you just kind of have to shrug your shoulders and like take their word for it, right? If you don't know the card is wrong.
Locals, it doesn't really matter, right? You can like, yeah, you're not supposed to have phones, but who gives a fuck? It's locals.
Locals is just up to your locals how to decide it, but yeah, this is a huge problem. Like, having cards just be printed wrong is a very bad thing.
It's also bad for getting people into the game, because when you're trying to teach somebody how a deck works, and you go, no, that like don't follow the evidence of your eyes and ears. 1984, like it's a little sketchy for sure.
Yep, and like I said, apparently this has been a problem for a while now. I think. It's just gaining attention now because the recent V collection, it was so widespread, you can't ignore it.
That's true. Well, because before it would just be like, oh yeah, that one card in that one clan. Usually it was in a clan that not a lot of people cared about this, but this was everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah. Hopefully they just change like printing companies or something, because this just sucks.
And this is why copy editors are important.
Bushiroad, and also like hire better copy editors. Holy shit!
I'm looking for work, Bushiroad. Hire me, senpai. You've been awfully quiet, Matt. Is there anything?
I mean, I don't really have much to say about the Misprints.
Okay.
I mean, they're pretty bad, but like, I don't know. I just can't care.
Can't care. It's a problem. Fix it already. Moving on.
Yeah.
So, Chronojet. What?
Oh, hell yeah. This is the most bizarre thing. I don't think I could have predicted this if you gave me like 20 timelines.
I don't think anybody predicted this.
So, to those who don't know, they are bringing Chronojet Dragon and Striding, not just from deck, like they have a G Zone again, into Overdress.
Yeah, no, you need to be more specific than that. They're not just bringing back Chronojet; they are bringing back GTD01 Chronojet as it was
11K.
Like GB2, it gains 5k, and your opponent can't call Sentinels. And when you stride, it can like counterblast one, put something to bottom of deck or something like that.
I have an important question. Does it have Persona Ride, or is it just like a normal guy?
I think it's just a normal guy. It is exactly the same as it was because the original version is going to be playable in D.
All right, so I guess I have another question, which I don't think any of us can answer quite yet. What the hell does GB2 mean in D format?
So
it has the same text, like reminder text, right?
Yeah, they're bringing back like an actual G Zone that goes like with your like goes next to your ride deck.
You have a G Zone, and it functions exactly the way the G Zone does right now, including the current stride rules.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a trip. Now, granted, that here I'll just share it so YouTube people have something to look at. Okay, so looks a little different. Yeah, active if you have 2 or more cards face up in total on your Vanguard Circle or G Zone. When it attacks, plus 5k. Cannot call grade 1 or greater units. So they're doing it like
Glory skill.
Yeah, the old Sentinel block, because Perfect Guards used to be all grade 1s. And then during
this text is exactly the same as it was before.
Yep, 11k, no Persona Ride like you were asking, Matt. And yeah, you can just use this. Now, when the point of Gear Chronicle is that they travel through time. All these things with like striding, the lore reasons are supposed to be like different timelines. So it stands to reason that Gear Chronicle was going to show up eventually.
I mean, like, in terms of what encounter cards are being made, they're just printing main character cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Majesty Lord, Dragonic Overlord, Phantom Blaster, and now Chronojet. They're just like going through all of the main character units.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that they're putting this back into.
And they did reveal like what's going on with the stride rules. I don't know if it's going to be on.
Yeah,
English Twitter from this week
includes dark states, so you can use all this stuff in whatever if you wish to. What?
Well, it includes the dark states like Over Trigger, but like
Jet
itself is
Jet itself is, but like we haven't seen all of the cards that are coming back in.
I assume they're going to function the way encounter cards all do, in that they're all Gear Chronicle.
Upstream Dragon, Smoke Gear, Bollich, which was the dude with the boomerang, right?
Yeah.
Major
I
Gear
think
Dragon.
They've already revealed that what's the PG is going to just be DPG.
So like the free if you have 1 or less cards in hand. Thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe that's what it said on stream. I don't read the moon runes, but that's what I heard people saying.
Makes sense. Not really a reason to not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
so they said next stage is being retrained. I don't know if they're just gonna like put the exact same text as the original next stage on it or not.
The drop 3 restand or go back to G Zone, stand your Vanguard, whatever.
Yeah. And I think you needed to be on Jet or have Chronojet name.
I think so, like as your heart card or something.
Next stage.
Yeah,
if you have a heart card with Chronojet Dragon in the same.
So stands to reason that because of like what this is going to look like in Dark States, that having the not Persona Ride, not 13k base, means that the rest of the stuff has to be at least somewhat good for the TD to be worth it. Otherwise,
it seems like since they're updating the PG to just work the same as other DPGs, I have to assume the rest of the cards are going to be retrained. It seems like Chronojet specifically, they wanted to keep it in line with the premium version of it.
Right.
Which does bring up something. Well, first, how do we feel about this?
I'm so confused.
I'm weirdly okay with it. Like, from like a... I hate the lore. I give no shits about the lore.
Yeah.
But
well, I'm not talking about this from like a lore perspective.
No. It makes sense thematically. How about that? Thematically, It makes sense with how the game works and how they've like marketed Gear Chronicle. It fits exactly for them to just Kramer their way into overdress and be like, surprise, we're back. Like, fine. If it turns out to be like, another Dark States deck that does a thing, fine, have fun. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. And yeah, it looks like the triggers are all just being updated to like D triggers.
That's cool.
So yeah, as far as how I feel, like, I think it's fine for the most part. It's a pipeline to premium is what a lot of people have been taking away from this. Like, introducing the stride mechanic, especially like old concepts like GB, is a good way to like lead people into premium when you already have kind of the tools necessary for it. I'm a little annoyed they decided not to update the stat line. I think that is for using this in standard, that's going to be a bit of a problem, just because like there are going to be times where you don't hit good numbers because you're 11 instead of 13, but there's also going to be times where your opponent can hit good numbers against you because you're 11 and not 13. Like, especially grade 3s. A vanilla column with a grade 3 boosted by a grade 1 is exactly 21.
Yeah.
That is math, yeah.
They gotta have something like, they gotta have someone with some oomph, or just like old Upstream Dragon put itself to 13k, so I'm guessing that's gonna happen again. But
it would be so funny if they reprinted Melum and it still only became 11k.
I mean, Melum's not in this set. This is going to be like a special pre-constructed set, so all of the Gear Chronicle stuff is just in this box.
Oh, I see. So, you're ruining my hopes and dreams. I understand that.
Yeah, but this does highlight problems that, like, as the game has advanced through its various reboots, like, things have changed, right? Like, the different power level is the most obvious one, where during the V-boot, they just decided arbitrarily, I guess to, like, help distinguish the new format, that they were just going to increase power level across the board.
Yeah, and then do that weird, like, attempted rock, paper, scissors thing with the 12, 12, 13.
That did not work, and like, it was one of those, like, when it happened, I think we didn't think about it that much, but in hindsight, seeing how little it has done in terms of, like, what becomes meta, but it is still annoying from, like, a gameplay to gameplay moment, it feels very much like the Overtrigger in that regard, where, like, it's just this annoying thing that you have to remember every now and then, and it doesn't necessarily change, like, what becomes meta, and so I feel like at this point, especially when V is at the whole, like, homogenous, everything does everything point in the game, like, this has been a really, like, awkward change that just makes it harder to cross formats.
Right.
And, like, also, like, in hindsight, the fact that we now have, like, different power numbers means that stuff like this, where they're suddenly bringing back these old legacy cards, is really weird, because it's just smaller than everything else.
Good luck, mate.
Like, honestly, like, I think somebody has been talking about it recently, or people in general have been talking about it, like, recently, of just, like, ejecting V and also probably Premium just into the sun and just dropping them entirely. I disagree with dropping Premium. I would happily eject V into the sun given the opportunity.
I think me too. despite me like slowly coming around on it, it just feels like a half measure. Just
Yeah. Like,
it's especially frustrating. Like I've noticed this in my locals, where you have a bunch of people show up, and then depending on who else is there, they'll be like, "Oh, it's all standard people. I just brought V shit. See ya," and then turn around and leave.
mhm.
So unless you want to be the guy who has a thing for every format, you know that's very frustrating.
Yeah. So, like, I disagree with the idea of like ejecting premium just because there are all these old cards that people still want to play, and having an eternal format is a good thing for that. I just don't like that because they keep making all these like structural changes to the game. Like, it's really hard to put some of these things back in the box, and it makes it so that it effectively, like, you can't really play like your old decks in premium because a lot of them are just outdated. And any times these old cards cross over into the current meta, it's usually not anything good.
It's always like unfortunate or degenerate, right? Or
Yeah. I
shit
think
like
the
that.
only thing that's like vaguely normal is people in Nitro's deck play the Break Ride Night Mist because you can call extra cards.
Yeah, and that's not broken.
And that's the only like normal interaction. Everything else is like, recently people have been playing the Descendant cards that let you ride up in Eradicators because the meta is so friggin' degenerate. The only way you win is to sometimes cheese it out by superior riding to Descendant and striding before your opponent.
Or what's that grade 2 that like you intercept with it?
Oh yeah, Unruly Dragon. I mean, that one is like normal, right? Like archetype name. It just happens to be a good card.
Yeah.
But you have all these like degenerate interactions, and then also like V itself, I feel like structurally has created problems for the games. In hindsight, gifts were a mistake. Honestly, this is even in hindsight. Like, I think we decided gifts were a mistake halfway through V when they introduced gift 2s, basically.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. We are in a unique position as Vanguard players where someone can go back and go see what our positions are, us included. Are we going to do it?
Probably not. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure like halfway through V, we already decided that gifts were a mistake. But, I think they have completely warped the way the game is currently played in those respective formats where...
Excel 2 especially.
Good
Lord. It's all like, it's less about the extra circle and the 5K and more about like...
No, that's also significant, right? Like, any deck that can stack Excel gifts really quickly just have extra attacks.
And then they also get a bunch of cards on top of it.
That's the thing, is the getting the cards to then fill those spaces.
So,
Gold Paladin being the most egregious example, right?
Like, honestly, like, another thing in favor of me just ejecting V entirely, like, not just stopping support for the format, like, actually just saying, no, you can't play V cards anymore is just, like, how bad gifts are. It's never going to happen. I don't think they can do that. I think they would probably destroy the game's reputation if they did.
I think we're too far in it.
Yeah. Just like, Genie, grant a wish, I could just snap my fingers and, like, V never happened.
Monkey's paw. Game dice.
Right. But yeah, like, I think we had this conversation before where, like, I think gifts overall might have been worse for the game than the overtrigger.
I don't know how I feel about that. Because I think, like, with gifts, there have been some interesting design aspects of it and, like, play style and things like that. Overtrigger has just been shit all the way down.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's worse.
Yeah. So, my stance on this is, like, overtriggers are really annoying from a gameplay perspective. Like, seeing the overtrigger is really annoying and kind of ruins your day, but in terms of, like, what defines the meta, I don't think it's had an effect in that way. I think, like, gifts have warped what becomes meta, because, like, decks that can take advantage of gifts better than other decks usually end up being good, and there are also a bunch of mechanics that, like, fundamentally may not have been that powerful, but then when you throw gifts into the mix, become really degenerate. So like what's currently happening with Odysseus, if it was limited to just like, okay, you start on one of the power minusing cards and then go into Odysseus, your numbers are like kind of big. You know, I think that would be annoying, possibly like oppressive, but you know, I think more people would be willing to wait it out. But the fact that you just get like draw 4 cards, have 4 extra circles, which also translates to 4 extra attacks, on top of like being able to minus your opponent's power and then rewrite into Genovius. Like that's extremely oppressive and degenerate, and these decks can just kill you turn 3 immediately. Like in V format, when Luard was first coming out, like being able to ride up early and get everything happening was very strong in and of itself. The deck was already good, but then the fact that like as you're going through that, you're stacking like 3-4 force markers, you know, that just makes it so much worse, where now your columns are fuck off huge while you're already gaining all this advantage and getting criticals on everything. Like decks that have been able to like spam out markers for the most part have just been like in the meta. I think Mordred, back when that first came out, like being able to make extra attacks with Blaster Dark and then also just stacking extra force markers on top of it. You know, Luard, obviously. I think Riviere probably would have been good pre-errata regardless, just because you can reride your Vanguard like 3-4 times, but the fact that you keep getting bigger and bigger by stacking force markers, you know, the Wiseman loop in Premium coming back the second time when they printed Gleipnir, like the fact that you can just put Excel 2 on, or Force 2 on that and just have a crit while you're already going through all this ridiculous power.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these could be fixed with hard once per turns, which they've done it in the past, right? Nemen,
they've done it a lot. They've done it
they
a
just kind of
lot.
Yeah, that's another thing about V is like they figured out how to balance cards and then they just kind of stopped halfway through.
Yeah, it's like
and of course like Percival spamming gifts out.
Yeah.
I think right now, in the current meta, even like Highlander, you can spam out a bunch of gifts by rewriting. Anjay also creates a force gift on her own, so you can make like a 30k restander really easily. I mentioned Gurgit already. I think Thavas, it's not like a direct thing. You get your extra Excel marker at the end, but I think like as the game goes on, it stacks up and gives Thavas a higher ceiling than other Aqua Force decks, being able to make the extra Excel circles.
Yeah.
It's
implicit with things like that and Chronojet. But I wonder what would happen if if they changed the ruling on Excel 2 to have your draws be at the end of the turn, or something like that, if that would help. Either that or they do the nuclear option, which is make any extra gifts be a hard once per turn, right? You get 1 from writing, and you can get 1 from effects, and the end. They've done it.
That would have repercussions for things like Astro Poets. I don't think they're going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is like they keep printing cards that give you extra circles, and I think that just fundamentally breaks the pacing of like getting gifts. You know, I think gifts were fine when you only got 1 per turn, but then, you know, they keep printing all these cards that give you extra gifts, and, you know, once that stuff's out there, it's kind of impossible to put it back in the box without just banning half of the cards that are playable right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do that. Like, they could implement a ruling that you can. Oh no, I don't think they can, because then Astro Poets still get fucked. So they'd have to like. They would have to do something where like you can't stack gift markers very easily, except for like the 1 or 2 decks where that's their gimmick.
I don't know. I feel like the easiest way to do it is just change Excel 2 to be get your draws at the end of the turn.
Mm-hmm.
So that way the implicit problem of making more rearguard circles and then getting the cards to fill them
Yeah, I mean,
is separated.
That still doesn't even solve Gold Paladin, because, like, Percival also gets you the Aglavale.
Yeah, that's true. But it's, well, instead of being like a +2, it's +1.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to deal with.
But yeah, I think, like, for the game, in terms of, like, warping the meta, I think gifts have had a much bigger impact, while also being very frustrating from a gameplay to gameplay moment, because, like, if your deck can't take advantage of your gift as well as the deck you're playing against, that's already fundamentally annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, those decks also tend to be stronger in the meta.
Yeah, there's very rare instances of either G bosses being the right of choice, or overdress stuff.
Yeah,
and
but
when it is, it's like a big deal.
Yeah, but even then, like, the thing that people are giving up most of the time are protect gifts, the worst one offensively. Because, like,
or you can be crazy like me and try and put Flightbird in Aquaforce, but that's
but you have a
stupid.
stride that makes an Excel circle.
That's true.
Yeah, so, like, every time you trade off, it's either because you can already make it up, or because you're playing the worst gift, so you don't care about an extra PG.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because, like, Shield Fisher, people were experimenting with that in Mega Colony and Night Rose. Both of those are protect decks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, same thing with Flagberg in, like, Mega Colony. That's a protect deck. What else is there? I think, like, Borrow Magnus makes its way into DI, which they don't bother writing Borrow Magnus. You want to get it off No Life King, but also that's a protect deck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we made a video where it's like D-series bosses you can use in other clans. It's aged kind of poorly. Like, I thought you could use what's her face, Tamayura in Tachikaze because of the free 5K. But
Honestly,
it turned.
if I was going to do anything with Tamayura, it would be in Murakumo, where you can, like, Shirayuki, but also everything has stealth in the name, so some of Tamayura's support synergizes with that.
That's another thing.
The obvious cheese ones are like Barrow Magnus and Greedon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, people are playing Greedon in, like, Pale Moon, I think, but that's because there's a really degenerate loop deck.
There is, and then also the Spike Brothers in Greedon, but that's like because you can cheese the double restand.
Yeah. So basically, like, the only reason people give up gifts is either some sort of ridiculous cheese deck, or they're protect gifts and they don't care that much.
So I think, like, overdress bosses, the only time. So, another thing is, like, if the 13K base, or in Shield Fisher's case, 18K base is enough to help defensively.
Mm-hmm. Also, well, another thing is that, like, shoot, I had a train of thought and I'm starting to lose. Right. Like, as we've gone through the formats, like, some decks have changed what their playstyles are since G. So we have this dual problem of, like, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, as far as, like, putting in your new support into an existing clan where the strides aren't there to really support it because they only make one premium set a year. And so they're constantly playing catch up. But I think the problem also goes in reverse, where there are a bunch of these old G era cards that could still be playable in the modern format, if not for the fact that they've had to, like, drop what they're doing and try to support a different playstyle all of a sudden. Like, so many old cards were keyword locked because that was the flavor of the format. And so you either can't use those strides with the new support because they don't have the right keywords, or, like, your boss unit actually wanted the keywords on the stride, so now you're stuck playing this horribly outdated deck that doesn't have modern stat lines that just can't keep up. So, like, I'm in favor of keeping premium around, but they have to do, like, extensive work to make the format, like, better. A more extensive ban list, like, more comprehensive support, both for, like, old existing, like, keywords and stuff from G that have been left behind, but also getting strides that are up to date with, like, the current cards, because, you know, you're not going to play Prison in any of the Stargate decks, right? Like, that's so specific.
Unless someone figures it out. Usually when people play Prison and Stardate, it's literally just for the soul charge. That's it.
Yeah, but that playstyle is so specific and so different from anything that anything else is doing that it needs like targeted support if you wanted it to be viable in premium. So they would have to make a stride that benefits from imprisoning things. And that's kind of the same for like a lot of the other decks too. Is just Prison is the easiest example of this does something completely different from anything else. Like the premium decks that have had crossover with standard recently are just the ones that have generic mechanics, like Flagberg just restands things, Borrow Magnus just plays. Well, Borrow Magnus and Greedon just play with the soul. So, and also
some things are just going to be easier than others.
And part of the problem too is just they keep making these fucking collab sets. So,
they really got to stop with that.
Like
it's really
2-3 sets a year that could be going to like better premium or just standard support, or even just a break month. Like, you know what? We're not releasing a product right now. Instead, they're giving us like Shaman King Volume 2, and that has the side effect of like, because we get these collab sets, 3-4 months after Japan, every now and then it just interrupts the current flow of releases. So that was something that other people have talked about, where the gap between products right now is so large. Everything's like 2-3 months behind Japan now that it's hard to be excited because you see this thing and then you're like, oh yeah, 3 months later we're going to get this because it's being interrupted by like Shaman King or Record of Ragnarok that nobody cares about.
Bushi, we know that you don't want to make it hard for us by releasing a set that we're not going to cover, but like, it's okay.
Yeah, and then there's just stuff like Monster Strike where like we're never going to get it, but it's just taking up a month of reveals.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, like if we were to have an idealized version of the game going forward, like, if I could snap my fingers and make everything like 11, 9, and 7 again, like I would probably eject V and all of its associated changes into the Sun because I think they've been overall terrible for the game.
So are we talking like never? Are you like going back in time and preventing it, or are you doing like a Thanos snap?
Like either or, honestly, but like
okay,
I feel like it would be nice if things were the old numbers again, just so there's consistency between formats and people don't get confused. I would erase everything V brought to the game. I don't really like gifts. Like the weird power discrepancy, obviously, but also like the current stride rules have been abused more often than not.
What was it, Thailand? Their rules are pretty solid, where it just, if you have been on grade 3 at some point.
Yeah, if both players were at grade 3 at some point, you can stride. But yeah, the current stride rules where it's like both players grade 3, or if you were already at grade 3 at the start of your turn, has been abused more often than not, right?
So ride down decks like Paleman.
Yeah, not even ride up decks too. Like, remember the Year of Ezel?
Well, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, and even right now, people are doing it with Descendant. It's bricky and inconsistent, but they can do it. Same thing with the Rivier deck, where it can do both.
Yeah.
Ride
down, you have Chronojet, Thavas, Pale Moon, and then, like you said, Riviera and riding up.
So yeah, like the current stride rules, I think the idea was solid when they first released. I think when they first put out the rules, that we were like, yeah, why wasn't this always the rule? But with the benefit of hindsight, like now that everything is much faster, the ability to stride before your opponent by riding up is just silly, and they've had to ban a bunch of otherwise probably fine cards because of it. So, like, Bende is banned in Premium, even though no one plays it, just because you can ride up. I think no one is doing anything with, like, Embodiment of Victory Aleph, but you can technically ride up with it, and if Kaguro ever gets a good stride, that could be something you have to think about.
One thing I do like about gifts is that, like, a lot of the V series grade 3s have like a solid grade 3 turn to like shore up your defenses before your opponent does the backswing with stride.
I think like the current pacing where like you can still use like standard grade 3 boss units and have an early game is fine. That was a huge problem with G era, was that like there was no early game.
Yeah.
It's just like things like being able to stack gifts, like the current stride rules where you can ride up and stride on your opponent and just cheese the game that way. Like I think those have been like net negatives for the game, and if I could just eject them entirely, I would. Unfortunately, I think this is one of those, like, now that it's out there, it's impossible to put it back in the box without significant changes to the game that may or may not kill it.
I think they just need to be more okay with frequent like ban list changes instead of it just being this Herculean task of like,
I mean,
oh god, we've made a mistake. Relax. It's okay if something goes crazy.
No, I think they're doing more regular ban lists. The ban lists just suck.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, they have to acknowledge that crazy things will happen, and that it's okay for them to like hit stuff like the double mystery flare and now ripples that are, cats out of the bag. They're probably gonna like mess some stuff up.
Yeah, we're getting a strategy presentation in September, and the current pace of releases is that like every strategy presentation there's going to be a new ban list. So we do have a semi-consistent schedule. They just have to make the ban list actually good.
Right. Yeah. Matt, you got anything?
Yeah, I hope there's. I don't know if you can kill these formats again. I mean, I expect them to stop supporting V much sooner, or like I expected them to stop supporting V already. To be honest, it's a miracle that V collections are still coming out. But you have kind of like two formats that are big memes. So I don't know.
What would you call the sets if they were to just stop doing V and just kept premium and overdress?
I mean, you just keep the current name of releases like premium collection and then DBT whatever.
Yeah.
Like
I
said,
call it premium collections.
Yeah, I think premium collection could benefit from more main deck cards. I think I have suggested this in the past, where like they could just release rear guards in these premium collections, and that would be kind of cool. A lot of old play styles that could still be viable if they just bothered to support them.
Yeah, some clans like really had their keywords matter, and others it was just kind of an afterthought. Like Engorge was so well like made for Tashikaze compared to something like, I don't know, Success. Like wasn't really it was just kind of there.
Yep.
One issue too is that they feel the need that every clan needs to get the same amount of support in these sets. So that you have, even if like a clan that's under supported is getting cards, also clans that have routinely been supported are also getting the same amount of cards.
Yeah.
Which is a continuous problem.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not a problem in the sense of like, oh, well, why shouldn't they get cards? It's like, well, what's your goal out of this set?
I think that's a pertinent question to ask. Like, for example, things like Nova Grappler, now Mega Colony, things of that nature, where they should be getting the lion's share of stuff compared to like your Paladins. Even although that does sell the set more, so that's also something to consider.
Like, I mean, quality of support matters too. If they just gave the already strong decks like a bunch of bad gimmicky cards and made some of the weaker and brought some of the weaker clans up a bit with like really good support, that would probably even things out too. Why is Nova Grappler getting 3 different boss units that are all bad?
I mean, there's an Enigma in DP as well.
Because they want to make TIE Fighter cry. That's why.
True.
How would you guys feel if the clans that are generally in better positions when this yearly set comes around gets more reprints than new cards, and then the clans that are like maybe in more dire straits get more newer cards.
I think there's a fundamental issue with that, in that we are assuming that Bushiroad knows what clans are better positioned than others.
Yeah. I mean,
or cares. They might not even give a shit.
No, I think they give a shit, because in the past, Bushiroad has been really petty, and like when a clan tops that they didn't want to top, they will just the next set will just have the most ass support ever.
Can you give me an example? I'm trying to think of one.
I know that happened with like 7 Seas, where they the 7 Seas rush deck happened, and then after that, everything suddenly had a grade 3 requirement.
Yeah.
I feel like it sort of happened with ZTVs, where it's like kind of a soft reboot of the whole clan. It took a couple sets for them to get back up, where like all the time leap shit was really broken, and then they released ZTVs that was completely different. And like the first wave of support out of like set 9 was really bad.
Yeah, it was all like nickel and dime shit, and then slowly they got back up there.
Like Tsukuyomi was good, and then OTT stopped being a clan for all the way up until GBT 12.
That's like there was like some news story where I think it was like a teacher in Oklahoma said to her students, like, "Hey, did you know you can have access to like MIT's like virtual library, or like some like big college's library?" And then they put her on leave just because she told them that.
Also, for the one that actually happened, like Nubatama, the discard mechanic, I think they thought was broken, so they just did not make a new Nubatama card until halfway through Break Ride.
Yeah, but they at least made Murakumo in the interim.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some good cards in there, I guess.
But yeah, sometimes that just happens, where like Bushiroad decides that they hate this clan in particular and just gives them the most garbage support imaginable.
I think my favorite saga is during the era when Murakumo was like the testing ground for whatever new ability they were going to put on a card. They would give it to Murakumo, overcost it to hell, and be like, "Here you go." And then later, at some point, they'll just give it to some other clan, and then be like, "It's like a Soul Blast."
Yeah, Shibaraku Buster.
It's like what's it called? When you're a younger sibling. Right, like
yeah.
all the shit was on the older sibling, and then
yeah,
shake my head.
Yep.
Yeah, like Shibaraku Buster was like Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 2, discard a card, and then what's Alfred Holy Saver, like a Counterblast?
It might actually be a Soul Blast.
Oh,
you see, no, it's a Counterblast. Just
okay.
Counterblast. Oh no, you do still have to discard a card for Alfred, but Shibaraku Buster has the same cost of like Counterblast 1, but you also and discard a card, but you also have to Soul Blast 2.
Yeah, and the Soul was not free.
Yeah. Oh, and like it only performs a drive check for the first battle, I think. Oh no.
No, I think it was the kicker was that Alfred Holy Saver had to do it on a Blaster Blade, and Shibaraku Buster could do it on anything, and that was their justification for it.
No, Shibaraku Buster had to choose something with the same name.
Son of a bitch.
On the board.
Oh. Well, thanks. I hate it.
Yeah, so. No, you had to choose a card choose a unit, search your deck for something with the same name, and then it performs a drive check for the first battle.
But you can just choose your Vanguard.
Yeah. But note that this is just a regular drive check where Alfred can choose any rearguard with Blaster Blade in its name, and it just gets Twin Drive. So even if you chose the Grade 2 Blaster Blade, it gets the Twin Drive anyways. You don't have to like specifically search out a Grade 3.
You're killing me.
Yeah, and then
good times.
Yeah, I think, and then Homer Raider was like one of the earlier restanding strides, but it had
but that one's one of the better ones actually. Of like the dumb like Counterblast 2 restand.
Yeah.
Because of He Done Scroll. But that's the only card that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to like choose 3 things with the same name and return them to deck. But yeah, like it does feel like I feel like I had better examples of this in my head, and I now just can't think of them. But yeah, sometimes Bushiroad just gets really petty.
Okay, that was a smorgasbord of different examples over like what 4 clans, you're fine. Trust me.
I'm not convinced that Bushiroad is petty. I just think they just like. I don't know if. I think Bushiroad has an idea of how they expect people to play the game.
That is true.
And nobody actually plays that way.
Yep. Like, they printed every restriction they possibly could on freezing Witchbende, and then that still made its way into Luard.
I think it's something that they have to be willing to adapt to. Otherwise, it's just going to be this terrible cycle of expecting players to play a certain way. They don't, because that's just how competitive players work. And then having to react to it, and then the cycle starts over again.
Yeah. I mean, apparently they have playtesters now, and they just still can't figure this out.
I'm telling you, they got to get like champion, or bring different fight in there. I'm sure he'll have some nugget of knowledge to help. Like, you have a bunch of YouTubers who are into the more competitive aspect of it. And I think that if they've shown some willingness by having like commentators, big YouTubers commentate. That could be us. Hit us up.
No.
You just say no.
I don't think any of us are good enough at this game to commentate properly.
I trust
Commander Jaime is, I think. I feel like he's won stuff. Hit him up.
No, I think the 3 of us specifically are too dumb to commentate properly, and also probably too vulgar.
That's definitely true. I trust Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Peter?
I'll put all my hopes and dreams on Peter. Okay. One of the commentators from Bushiroad.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good guy.
Yeah. No, my goal is to just play OTT in every format, including Standard, and just eventually get Bushiroad to let me reveal the next mediocre OTT stride.
No.
Look, I'm just saying to people out there, do you think gifts were a mistake?
Please, feel free to tell me how wrong I am.
Yeah, tell us how wrong we are in the comments down below or on Twitter at Nexus at Night. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/Nexus at Night. You get a whole ass bonus podcast every week with the 3 of us. We got merch, we got playmats, all that good stuff. Tell us what you want to see. Maybe we're working on different stuff. I'm doing Vita pre-transitions. He's doing History of Vanguard. What else do you want to see from us? Let us know. At Nexus and on Twitter, Instagram. What about the rest of us?
At Wiggums, 2Gs on Twitter.
You can find me at Plasma Eclipse.
At Atlas Novak, Twitter or Instagram, or at my other at Generation Dan on Twitter for my other comedy podcast, or Generation_Dan on Instagram. That also comes out every Thursday. So if you're a fan of Atlas Novak in particular, Thursdays are fun for you now. So,
hell yeah.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening. Until next time, I was Atlas.
I'm still Matt.
I'm Root Beer.
And have a good night, everybody.